What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Acura Audio Garage. Today we're going to continue the DIY Pro Series on our second generation Acura TSX. This is the second video in the series. If you're looking for all the videos in the series, check down in the comments. I'll leave a link to the playlist. In this video we're going to be discussing the ELS sound system, which comes standard in your tech package or navigation equipped Acura TSX. This is a base, but I have all the components from a tech package to show you so we can go over the sound system. Before we jump into the video, I'm just going to cover some quick questions that I know everyone probably has. So the first one is, can I upgrade my radio if I have navigation? Yes. Can I upgrade my subwoofer if I have navigation? Yes. Can I change my speakers? Yes. Can I change my camera? Yes. Can I add CarPlay to the factory navigation? Yes. All those questions, the answer is yes. All those items are possible. If you're looking into how to do a specific one, make sure you subscribe. We're going to be filming videos covering all those individual subjects later on. The second generation Acura TSX from years 2009 to 2014 was released with two audio systems. You had the premium audio system and the ELS audio system. The premium audio system had 7 speakers. The ELS audio system had 10 speakers. They both were powered by a factory amplifier, and their amplifiers are different. So even though the ELS system and the premium sound system have a different number of speakers, they do go in the same areas. So your ELS audio system has 10 speakers. They're going to be a front door speaker, front tweeter, same on the opposite side. So far you have 4. A center dash speaker, just behind that grill. Then you have rear door speakers. So you have a speaker here, a speaker back there. In your base, like this one, these are empty, but in your ELS sound system, there are speakers there. Then you have another speaker back here, another 6.5 back there, and then your woofer. So in total, you have 6 6.5s or 5.25s. We'll get into that later. They're going to look very similar to this. They're actually going to be black instead of yellow, but there's going to be 6 of them. Then you're going to have 2 tweeters. They're going to say ELS. Then you're going to have 1 center speaker, which is going to look just like this. If you have a wagon, instead of having rear deck speakers, because you don't have a rear deck, you get pillar speakers. So you get 3.5 pillar speakers that sit on the C pillars back here. And those are, again, 3.5s. And then instead of your standard 8-inch subwoofer that goes on your deck, so this would be, you know, in the sedan, instead of that woofer you get a woofer inside an enclosure. This is off of a base, but they look the same. The ELS one is going to have a built-in amplifier. This one doesn't, but it's still going to be in this same exact enclosure. And believe it or not, the woofer inside this box is identical to this woofer. They're just mounted differently. So if you have a wagon, 3.5s, remember, subwoofer box, it's extremely similar to the MDX. So if you haven't seen the videos on the MDX, I recommend watching those sound system videos, because upgrading your TSX, at least the audio components, are going to be extremely similar. Yeah, some of the actual speakers look different, but it comes to theory, it's all the same. And what I mean by that is this amplifier and the amplifier in your MDX, in your TL from these year series with the ELS system, are all the same. So even though the speaker layouts change, and yes, this has bigger speakers in the rear doors, they're powered by the same factory amplifier. They may have different part numbers, but they're interchangeable. We have tested it. So just know that if you have a wagon, it's extremely similar to having an MDX, because the sound systems are pretty much laid out the same. The parts may be different, the speakers may be a little different, but they're ultimately the same. In the TSX, I think it has the best setup to be a loud car, because unlike your other ELS systems, you have 6 of these. So in your MDX and your TL, even though the TL has rear door speakers, they're only 3.5s. And then the rear pillar speakers in your MDX are only 3.5s. The TSX is the only one that has front door woofers, rear door woofers, and rear deck woofers. So you have a good platform to build a really loud system without going crazy, just because you have extra speakers you can tap into to really create volume. All right, let me stop rambling about that. Let's continue the video. So if you're wondering to yourself, do I have the premium sound system? Do I have the ELS sound system? It's really easy to tell. if you have navigation, which means you have the navigation screen and you have the navigation control knob, which is this knob in the center right here, then you have the ELS system. All your TSXs with navigation or the tech package have the ELS audio system. If you have a Honda Accord and you're watching this video, it may be possible you have the ELS system and you don't have navigation. That's only in the European market. Here in the States, if your TSX has navigation, it has the ELS system. It's that simple. If you're still unsure, or you're like, are you sure I have the ELS system? Yes, I am sure. I've done the research, but if you want to look into it yourself, this is what the amplifier looks like. It's gonna be silver. The amplifier in the base is black. This one's made by Panasonic. The other one's made by Pioneer. They're in the same spot regardless of if you have a base or a tech package. They're going to be in the trunk behind the liner. So later in the video I'll pop this off, but right behind here you pull this back and you could see the amplifier. It's held on by 3 bolts and it has 2 connectors. They're pretty easy to take off if you're looking to replace it or something. If you have a wagon, your amplifier is kind of below your rear seat. I'll throw a diagram on the screen so you can see it. We'll talk about it a little bit later on as well. Alright, if you see me look down a bunch, it's because I'm reading my script. I have 16 pages of this stuff. I want to make sure I tell you everything I wrote down. I have a bad habit of going off script and then forgetting information in the video. So the next thing on my script is we talked about we talked about the amplifier. We need to talk about the navigation system. And the reason why we need to talk about the navigation system is because the navigation system and the audio system are combined kind of into a all-in-one platform on this car, but it is a little bit more complicated than that, so we need to talk about it. The first thing is you want to think about it in 2 parts. So if you have a 2009 or a 2010, your TSX has a different navigation system than if you have a 2011, 12, 13, 14. 2009, 2010, you still had the old school navigation system. Now this isn't it. It looks like this. The connectors are different. I'll throw a diagram on the screen. But 2009, 2010, for some reason Acura decided that the TSX is still going to have a it's still going to have a DVD-based navigation system where the CD is spinning. This is your CD player. This is the navigation brain. They did decide that the camera will no longer go through the navigation brain. The camera goes directly into the screen, but it's still navigation based. It's still a CD or DVD navigation based system. And this is located in the trunk. I'll put a diagram on the screen so you can see it. And you know, this thing still, please check disc. Those DVD based units cause a lot of issues for Acura. I'm sure if you have an older Acura, have had an older Acura, or if your TSX is a 2009, 2010 with navigation, you might have run into the please check disc error that has plagued them for years, and that continues to be an issue for those older systems. So Acura, for some reason, in a TSX decided to introduce it in 2011, but the 2009 Acura TL launched with a hard drive based navigation system, and this combined your radio and navigation system into one. This is for a TL, but TSX is going to look extremely identical. I'm talking about the drive that sits below the screen. So in your TSX you have something like this, right? Control screen right here, and then the drive. This is the actual navigation brain in your 2011, 12, 13, 14. This is out of an RDX, just for representation. So you have this, you have the control panel. In 2011, they combined the navigation system and the radio into one. And then you end up with something that looks like this, where your top connections are for your navigation and your bottom connections are for the audio system. But this is an all-in-one audio navigation unit, Acura likes to call it, and this is the big difference in the systems. So Acura decided to combine the navigation unit and the radio into one unit, and this is what you have going forward. So 2011, 12, 13, even all your newer Acuras, this is the combination they use, where the navigation system is built into the audio unit. Now this is important because the harnesses that you use to integrate into the factory when you have a 2011, 12, 13 are different than the one when you have a 2009, 2010. And that's something you need to keep in mind. Also, Your ability to keep the navigation is going to vary on year, and we'll cover that later in the video. Normally we tell people, hey, you can't keep the navigation. The truth is you kind of can if you're willing to do some custom wiring and some custom modifications to your dash, but 9 out of 10 times we tell people you can't, because it's a lot harder and not easy for a normal DIYer to do. Something I forgot to mention that's pretty important is, I said that, you know, the connections changed. The CDs changed too. So there was an orange CD and a white CD. I've never gotten really into the Acura navigation game where like I'm upgrading my navigation and working with it and like really into it. I'm using my phone. I mean, most people are too. But if you're a person who, you know, is really dependent on that factory navigation, there was an orange CD, there was a white CD. And then if you're wondering when all the changes happened for going from a DVD drive to a hard drive based navigation system, there is a service bulletin. It's 05-018, and it's going to cover all of the versions of navigation that there are. So talking about the software, and then all the drives available and when what was switched. So if you want to see all that information, there's a good breakdown on that service bulletin. I recommend you look it up. If you are thinking about, hey, I want to upgrade my navigation, I have a 2009, I want to put in something from a 2014, it's not really possible unless you can create custom harnesses and reroute wires yourself. The connectors, some are the same, some are different, and they go to different locations. Since the DVD brain is in the trunk, you would have to run those wires up to the dash to, you know, upgrade your navigation. Also, if you have a TSX without navigation, you want to convert to navigation, again, possible, extremely difficult, not worth it, because you're going to need to create custom harnesses that run to different locations in the car, including the BCM or the PCM for certain signals, and you'll need to buy all the components. So if you're looking to add navigation to your car, there are different ways to do it, but if you don't have navigation, don't think about converting. It's just a painful process that is not worth it, in my opinion. Another note on the navigation system, some components look the same. No matter what year you have, this is going to be essentially the same, where this is just a display or control mechanism. It doesn't have any real functionality other than being a control board. So you have one connection here, one connection here, one connection here. This is going to be the same, even though they look a little different. But if you're looking at other components of your navigation system, like let's say you're trying to get the screen from a 2009 to work in a 2013, or a 2014 screen to work in 2009 because yours is damaged, even though the connection's the same, the pinouts are different. Acura did make changes besides just the components. They made changes to the wiring between the navigation systems. So my recommendation is, if you have a fault with your navigation system from 1 year and you want to fix it, try to get something from that same year. So if you have a 2009 or 2010, try to grab stuff from those years. If you have a 2011, 12, 13, 14, try to grab stuff from those years. Otherwise, you might be stuck getting components that don't work for your actual car. The reason why we covered the navigation system so in depth is because it plays a major part into your audio system. It helps control it, and it also feeds audio to the factory audio system. So your navigation system, if you're planning on replacing your radio, expect that it's no longer going to be functional, and you're going to lose all the features that your factory navigation provides you. Like I mentioned earlier, the navigation system is going to detect which wiring harnesses you need to use. And if you're looking to get a harness from us, all that it's going to ask you is what year, and we'll make the determination for you. But if you're trying to like DIY this yourself completely, the harnessing is different depending on what year you have. If you're set on keeping your navigation, what it really comes down to is keeping this control knob. So I don't know if you can see, but this actually is screwed into place. These buttons right here, this, and this control knob are all part of this mechanism right here with this 5-pin connector. So if you can transfer this to a new dash kit, so you know Metro has a dash kit, I'll show you more on this later, but if you can transfer it to your new dash kit, then you have the controls for your navigation system. Then you have to take care of two other things. You have to make sure, if you have a 2009, 2010, that this stays on and powered in the trunk, which is going to be essentially, it's going to do it, like, unless you mess with it. And then if you have a if you have an 11, 12, 13, you need to make sure that the drive that sits below this thing is still connected and gets power. This is going to be a little bit trickier because this is where you get radio power, but it's possible you can create some splices, or if not, T-harness. They exist. Like, we can make one for you. Just be complex with that. And then as long as this display screen stays up, you can still keep your navigation system. You're just going to replace this with the dash kit, transfer the knob, and then put like a floating single DIN or something. So it is possible. You can do it. It does get more complex. I just gave you the overall theory, but I know a lot of people are like, I can't lose my navigation. I can't lose my navigation. So it is possible, if you want to go aftermarket radio, to keep the navigation. Even if you'd replace this screen, you can use a video converter to send video that would have went to this screen to your new screen. It's a little bit tricky because on those Android screens, they don't like the video format that converts to. Sometimes it doesn't look proper. If you're looking to see more information on how to keep your navigation system with an aftermarket radio, make sure you subscribe. We'll cover that in a later video. If you're looking to replace your factory radio with a traditional double DIN, you have navigation, you don't care about the navigation, stick around till the end of the video. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I'm not going to demonstrate it, but I'm going to explain to you how to do it. I'll show you all the parts, all the diagrams, and you can get it done if you want to do it before we complete the video on how to do it step by step. Alright, so we spoke about the navigation system. There are a ton of other components integrated into your audio system, but the navigation is a big one. A lot of people really care about it, so I want to make sure I cover that first. Now I'm going to dive into the rest of the audio system. And there are a lot of components, so I'm going to read you down the list, and then we'll go down our list and cover each one individually later on in the video. So, of course, we talked about the navigation system. That's component number 1. Then you have your factory amplifier, which I'm going to say is component number 2. Which is right here, again, made by Panasonic. It's silver. Then you have the audio navigation unit, which that would actually be the drive in your TSX. So again, below the control panel, this is your audio navigation unit. It's really, in your TSX, not going to have any controls. It's just going to have the input for the DVD or CD. Then after that, we have the audio navigation switch panel. This panel, again, doesn't really do any processing. It might have some chips for some processing, but it's really just a control panel. It's really just these buttons. You press a button, it sends a command to the audio unit, and it's using these connections to do so. Then after that, you have your ANC module. So this was news to me. I actually did not know the TSX had ANC, but we'll cover that later on. The ANC module is silver. It's just like this, a little bit smaller, but silver in this color is what I mean. And it's behind the radio, and we'll cover more about it and what it does later on. Then you have the hands-free control unit and the microphone. So this is for your Bluetooth calling. I don't have one to show you. I just have a representation. This is very common to fail in your Acura, but we'll cover that again later on. Then after that, you have your antennas. So in this car, you have AM, FM, and XM. Your AM and FM antennas are embedded into the back defroster lines. I'll show you that. And then your XM is a little fin on top towards the trunk above the rear windshield. I'll show you that as well. Then you have XM and AcuraLink. So if you're in Canada, you don't have XM or AcuraLink, but this is big. I think these are in the trunk as well. I'll throw the diagram up on the screen. This is what gets you all your information for your navigation system. So again, never really messed with navigation myself personally, but doing research, AcuraLink tells you what it is, and it's either going to work off your phone, which I found weird, so it'll use data from your phone when you're connected via Bluetooth, or it'll use satellite data through XM to get you live traffic updates or information about your car. So a big thing is, like, the navigation system will remind you, or if you have a code, it may have some codes stored, like their definitions, but AcuraLink is going to return further definitions or further information, or send my information, or send your information to the dealer. So if you have navigation, AcuraLink, you probably use it and you don't even realize, but you want to, this is something we need to make sure we mention because it is important. Then you have your aux input port. So just like the base, you have aux in the center console. You have a USB port. So in the base, you have a USB controller that's in the center console. The USB controller is actually built into the radio, and it even uses a whole different port or connector, and that's going to be this guy right here. So it has a weird connection, but the USB controller or USB mechanism for controlling media is built right into the navigation system. Then we have your steering wheel control switch, which this is my representation, but this is just what controls volume up and down on your steering wheel. We're also going to talk about the steering wheel controls for the navigation, so the voice prompt and back, and then the steering wheel controls for your call commands. Those are parts of different circuits, but they are going to be covered in the video so you can understand how they function. Then we finally move on to your speakers. So you have 6 of these, like I mentioned, they're completely identical, but they are black. So it's a very hard, if you have an ELS equipped, your car is pretty rare. Like, I spent a lot of time looking for one locally that I could work with to cover this video, and a lot of them are like, it's very few people. So this is out of a base, and if you do searches, this is usually what comes up. But the ones that are in your ELS system are actually different. They are black and the back is different. So I don't have one to show you. I was gonna buy a set, but they're like $100 for 2, and it was just for the video, so it didn't make sense. If you do want to upgrade, let's say you think that the ELS speakers would sound better in your bass, be careful. They are lower impedance, so they might overheat your factory amplifier if you have a bass. Like, they're designed for the ELS system for this amp. If you put them into a bass, you might have issues, you may not. I don't know if we'll be able to complete that video, but if I can get my hand on a set of speakers, I'll definitely test it for you. Or if you want to test it yourself and put it down in the comments, I'm sure everyone who's watching this video would appreciate that. Talked about the woofers. Let's move on to the tweeters. We have 2 of these guys. These guys have a bass blocker on them. They look like this. They clip in place. They still have the proprietary connector, just like every other Hans speaker. Then we talked about your center speaker already, but again, you have 1 of these. So if I mention the count, 6 of these, 2 of these, 1 of these, and then lastly you have your woofer. This is 8 inches, but it does have proprietary mounting, so you want to keep that in mind. And then again, proprietary connector, just like all the speakers do. If you do have a wagon, then we mentioned earlier, you're going to have 3 of these instead of 1, and you're only going to have 4 of these, and then you're still going to have 1 of these, but it's going to be in a box. So that's the summary of the system. I'm going to dive into each one coming down the list. So the first one on the list was the navigation system. We already talked about that, so let's talk about the factory amplifier. Alright guys, we almost forgot, well, I almost forgot, your backup camera. So this is part of your navigation system, and I get questions about this pretty so often, so I just want to make sure I throw it in here. I'm going to throw it right in after the navigation system. This feeds video directly to this screen, so you're able to keep your factory backup camera if you go with an aftermarket radio. I'll show you how to do that when we cover that video. It just requires a special harness. We have it available. And the only issues I see with the backup cameras is that this gets hazy. So over time, this will get hazy. You'll get like a lousy backup camera image. Also have very poor performance at night. So if you're driving a lot at night and you're using your backup camera, let's say you do Uber Eats or something like that, and pulling in and out of places, upgrade this camera to one with IR lighting. We have the harness. You can make it possible, and you'll get better performance at night. There is no mounting mechanism that's going to mount just like the factory, but this does have 2 screws, one here and one here, and you can mount a new camera on here. But we have the license plate light camera, which goes in the back. I'll throw a picture, and that is easier to install, I feel like, and doesn't require any holes. But you could always go with just a license plate bracket camera. So what I want to say is, you can upgrade this camera. We have the connector to do so. You can upgrade the camera on the factory screen. You can go aftermarket radio factory camera, or aftermarket radio aftermarket camera on the factory line, so you don't have to run any wiring. There's a lot of possibilities here. This is part of the system. The lines are built onto the screen and not this. So when you go install your backup camera and you use it with your aftermarket radio, the lines are going to be on the screen. They won't be on this camera. Your new aftermarket radio will need to put lines on the screen. Also, I don't think it happens till 2012 where they get upgraded, or 2010. No, I don't think it happens till 2011 or 2012 where these get upgraded, where they have the 3 views. And the way that works is it has additional pins that change the voltage provided to the camera, and that changes the view. So you have your standard view, then you have like a wide view, and then you have like a bumper view. When you replace the factory radio with an aftermarket one, you want to keep the factory camera, you're only going to keep that normal view. So that's something else to keep in mind. If you replace this with an aftermarket camera, you're only going to get that one view to your factory screen from the aftermarket camera, and the lines may not line up, your parking lines on your new screen. So just beware of that, something important to note. Alright, so here's the factory amplifier. It has two connectors, one's missing here. It has two connections, a 28 pin and a 19 pin. This amp was engineered by Panasonic, but it was designed by Elliot Schneider. And the reason why it's called the ELS audio system is because he pretty much named it out himself. So here's the actual board. And this is a pretty complex little amp for what it is. This amp casing is silver. If you have a bass, it's black. This amplifier is interchangeable from years to years, and it's not VIN specific or VIN programmed. So if you have an amplifier that is made by Panasonic, you have the ELS sound system, you can grab one from a 2013 and put it in your 2009, or you can grab one from a 2009 and put it in your 2013. As long as they have the ELS system, they're interchangeable. The parts are different. I'm sure there might have been minor revisions or upgrades. Overall functionality is the same, and all the systems communicate with one another. The only main difference I found in the amplifiers is that on the wagon, I haven't been able to test this. I'm going to assume it's the same because I doubt they would make that change. On the wagon, the output for the subwoofer goes to another amplifier inside this thing. The output that they're sending from here to there, I don't think it's low level. I think the subwoofer output would be the same that they would send to here, and then that amplifier is just built, I'm talking about the amplifier in the box, that amplifier is just built to take that high output voltage, because I doubt that the wagon amplifier would decrease the voltage on the output. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Again, haven't been able to test it. If you have a wagon, you want to test it for us, just check your subwoofer output before it goes in the box. How high of voltage does it get? Other than that, again, pretty much the same, pretty identical. Now this thing is super complicated. So on this board right here, we have something that can drive 10 individual drivers, and we have a DSP that upmixes audio when it needs to and processes commands to change fader, balance, etc. So in this little board is a lot of technology, and it is very complex. Now, this amplifier only has about 20 amps of output that it's working with. So in your factory design and your factory audio system, regardless whether you have the ELS or the bass, there's only about 20 amps of current from the passenger fuse box to the trunk. So initially under the hood, there's a 40 amp fuse. It's on the strip of fuses, the fuse link. It's one of those that runs to the passenger box, and then your seat warmers, I believe, and your amplifier share the same power from that 40 amp fuse to power the sound system. Now if you have a wagon, you also get the bonus of more bass because the built-in amplifier in the box has a 10 amp fuse, and that 10 amp fuse gets power individually away from the 20 amp fuse. So you have total 30 amps of current. They're just between 2 amps. Now the reason why I mentioned the fuse ratings or the power ratings is because I'm sure you're wondering like how much power this is even put out, how much power is going to each speaker, etc. I'm just going to use basic math and some low-level knowledge of technology to kind of get an estimate. So we'll take the 20 amps that are available to us, we'll multiply that by 14 volts, and then we'll take 80% of that, because I'm pretty sure it's a Class D amp, and Class D amps are between 70 to 80% efficient, so we're giving them the benefit of a doubt. It's 80% efficient. That's going to give us about 280 watts or so, and the way it's divided in the system, I want to say each speaker is getting between 20 or 30 watts. These are probably getting about 20 watts. Your tweeters are definitely getting less power. I think they say on them 15 watts. Yeah, so this says 6 ohm, 15 watts. And then your woofer says 2 ohms, 40 watts. If you have a wagon, it's going to say like 80 watts or 100 watts on it. So the way that breaks down, it's about 15 to 20 watts each speaker. But again, this was an 8-channel amplifier with a DSP. You have 10 woofers or speakers, drivers that it's powering. And the way that it does that is by combining your front channel. So it takes both of these speakers and they're powered by the same channel on the amplifier. So think channel 1 is your front left woofer and your front left tweeter, and they're sent the same full range signal. So the way that the tweeter protects itself, or Acura protected the tweeter, is they have a base blocking capacitor that creates a crossover right around 3000 hertz. So these together form one channel. So this is channel 1, then the opposite side is channel 2. Then you have channel 3 and 4, which are going to be your rear door speakers. So channel 3, channel 4, and channel 5 and 6 are going to depend wagon or sedan. So that'd be another 2 woofers or 2 3.5s. Then your channel 8 will be your subwoofer. So that's how your factory amplifier sound system breaks down. Your fronts are getting a full range signal, your rears are getting a full range signal, your rear deck are getting a full range signal, your subwoofer and your center are crossed over differently. So your center has a crossover, I want to say right around 800 hertz or 1000 hertz. Your subwoofer has a crossover right around 150. Your rear pillars in your wagon, I'm not sure if they're crossed over or not. I want to say yes, but I am not sure, because if they're all using the same amplifier, this isn't going to have crossovers for these. What it will have on your rear doors is a different EQ curve, and I'm sorry I don't have image of this. We're going off what we recorded from the MDX because the amplifiers are the same, so the output's going to be the same. On the MDX, the EQ curve for the front speakers was pretty good. At higher volumes, you didn't really lose that much bass, but on your rear speakers, the bass roll-off was noticeable after like volume 25 from the factory radio, factory amplifier. So again, different EQ curves on your speakers, so just beware of that if you're planning a speaker replacement. Alright, so that covered the output side of the amplifier mostly, and that was just power, crossovers, and how it powers your speakers. Now we need to talk about the input side, and this is where it gets a little bit more complex. So your output was coming out of this connector, which is not on my board because we need it for testing, but your input is through this 28 pin connector. So you do have a bunch of inputs, but primarily what works this amp is you have 1 volt of fixed output from the factory radio. So again, this is the audio unit. Remember, it's not the screen, it's this. So from this thing to here, there is 1 volt of output at all times. No matter how much you raise the volume, this doesn't change the amount of voltage that it puts out. It just sends commands to this to change the volume or raise the volume. So 1 volt of preamp output fixed at all times from there to here. That 1 volt is outputted via stereo, front left and front right, from the audio unit to this amplifier. You may be wondering what the hell is 1 volt fixed output, and it just means that traditionally when you have an amplifier, you change the volume on your radio, the output of that radio is going higher. So like you might have seen advertisers for 4 volt output, 2 volt output, 1 volt output, 5 volt, 10 volt output, etc. Normally your aftermarket radio is going to top out about 4 volts, and the higher the output of the aftermarket radio, the better it is for your amplifiers, because you have to tune the level or gain less. Like if it has a higher output voltage, you don't have to turn the gain as high. In this case, they have matched it together, and it's always 1 volt, and it doesn't change. So if you decide to take the factory radio and replace this amplifier, bypass it, etc., your volume is never going to change. It's just going to stay at 1 volt fixed no matter what. So that's why this is important. The other thing is you have stereo output, front left and front right, that gets upmixed by this. So if you were to take the output from the radio, only your 2 front speakers would work, unless you had a radio, unless you had an amplifier that can upmix just like this. So stereo, front left, front right, then this takes all that, processes all that audio, and generates the output for all your speakers. There is CAN bus communication between this and the audio unit. So that's how those commands are sent. So 1 volt fixed output stereo. When you want to make it louder, when you want to fade it, when you want to put it to the front, when you want to put it to the rear, when you want to put it to the left, when you want to increase the bass, when you want to decrease the bass, when you want to increase the treble, that's all being done via CAN bus commands. They're the RS-485 interface, and they're being sent from the audio unit to the amplifier, and they're being processed by the amplifier. The commands can get very complex. You can even send a beep to this. You can tell it to mute. there are different commands. There's a lot of stuff. It's very complex, and we have figured it out. We do have our own amplifier interface that can work with this amplifier if you want to replace the factory radio and keep the factory amplifier. We'll cover that more later, but I just want to let you know that this thing is complex. It even gets a little bit more complex because if you turn on Dolby mode, then instead of stereo input, you get 6 channels of output from the radio to here, and it's to create like a surround sound experience. So then in that case, you still have 1 volt of fixed output, but it's coming from 6 channels instead of 2. So then the way that breaks down is you get front, left, front, right. So you get rear, left, rear, right. You get sub and center. So that's how it would break down, except for the center, but that's how it would break down in the bass, where the output is on each individual channel. In this, again, stereo, but when you put it in Dolby mode, you get 6 channels of output. But super complex. I'm sure a lot of the stuff that you heard about this amplifier is like, what the hell, what? Just know, if you want to replace this, you have to integrate into it. There's really no way to bypass this unless you install a new aftermarket radio. Otherwise, think about, if you're going to keep the factory radio, you're going to have to integrate with this in some way or another. We're going to cover the amplifier in more detail in our other videos when we do the amplifier bypass or the amplifier integration video. So make sure you subscribe and you stay tuned for that video. But if you're trying to do something today or trying to do something now or this week, we do have a video with our T-harness on the Acura MDX. Again, same amplifier, so you can follow these same exact steps to integrate into it. Actually getting to it or where it is different. Obviously MDX is behind the dashboard, here's in the trunk, but the actual wiring is the same. You plug into this. Just follow the video if you're looking for it. I'll put it down in the description. But if you're looking to jump the gun and get on this early or integrate with this now, we do have a video on how to do that. It's on the MDX. The amplifier is the same. You can check that out. So before we continue down the list, I just want to share with you that the factory amplifier is the only location in the car where all the wiring comes together. So a common mistake we see is people buy the wrong harnesses. They connect their wires and they think that the wiring behind the radio or the wiring at the audio unit, so this wiring right here that's behind your radio, or if you have a newer TSX and this wiring behind the radio, you think, oh, this is where my speakers are. No, so this wiring leads to the trunk, and the trunk has all the wiring to your speakers. So at the amplifier in the trunk is the only place where all the speaker wires come together and where all the wiring from the radio comes together. So if you're trying to install an aftermarket radio and you want to bypass factory amplifier, know that you're going to have to do some wiring at the amplifier and some wiring at the radio to get it all working. We covered the amplifier. We're going to talk about the audio navigation unit. And again, depending on your TSX, you're going to have different looking ones. They kind of look extremely similar. I'll throw pictures on the screen, but ultimately 2009, 2010, you had a 6 CD changer built into this thing because it didn't have the navigation system built into it yet. So it's just a big 6 CD changer, but it was the audio unit. It was responsible for generating audio from all your different sources. So all AM, FM, XM, everything went through here, then to your factory amplifier. And again, these are all controlled by this control panel. So it doesn't have any buttons because all the buttons are here. Again, this is out of an RDX. I'll throw the ones on the screen for a TSX. Now, on the back, the connections are different depending on years. So 2009 and 10 only have about 6 connections on the back. 2011, 12, 13 have like 9 connections on the back. And it's because, again, your navigation system got integrated into the audio unit in 2011. So that's the reason for more connectors, and that's the reason why you lose the 6 CD changer. So if that's like a big thing to you, oh, I want my CD changer back, you're not going to be able to have it in your 13, in your 11, 12, 13. You can get an older TSX and get your CD changer back. On the 2009, 2010, the audio unit you can remove and your navigation system will still work, because all these connections really don't have anything to do with the navigation system. One of them does take audio from the navigation system, but everything else to actually control, move the screen, make selections has nothing to do with this. In your 2011, 12, 13, this is the brain for the navigation system. So if you remove this, the navigation system stops working completely. Your navigation system and your audio systems talk to each other via CAN bus as well. It's the GA net bus that Acura has been using for years. And that's what's going to process commands that you send to the navigation. So like if you're like, hey, turn the climate, so if you're like, hey, turn the fan up, then you hit the button, HFL reads the command, goes from the HFL to navigation. Navigation does what it does, sends that command through the CAN bus up to the control screen, changes the climate. So everything's all linked together. It's a very complex system, but you are able to replace components regardless of that communication. Both the navigation unit and the audio unit have their own codes that are needed to activate them. So if you ever lose power or change your battery, you're going to need those codes. I'm going to throw the website up on the screen, and now it's changed a couple times, but this is the most current one, and you want to make sure you put and brand equals Acura at the end, because if you don't put that, it's going to think you have a Honda and it's going to give you a bunch of errors. So I'm going to put the link up on the screen. Make sure you follow that exact link. I'll also leave it down in the description. Just make sure you put brand equals Honda at the end, or you're going to have a problem and it's not going to give you the codes. But again, you're going to have a code for the navigation system. You're going to have a code for the audio system. They're going to be different, so make sure that you have both. Usually they're in your glove box. Sometimes they're in your owner's manual. So look for them. If you can't find them, go on the website. It's going to ask you for your VIN. It's going to ask you for the serial number. Find the serial number on the actual unit. So right here, serial number. You put all that in and you can get your codes. If you don't want to pull the radio, there is a trick you can do that usually works on all of them. But what you're going to do is you're going to take this, you're going to hold 1 and 6. So make sure your radio's off. You're going to hold 1 and 6, and then hit power, and then the serial number will come on the screen and you can use that. I'm not sure. I know that works for the audio unit. I don't think that works for the navigation unit. I think you will have to pull it to get the serial number, but I'm not sure 100%. You'd have to double check that. I'd check it for you, but again, I don't have a TSX with navigation to test it on. So covered the amplifier, covered the audio unit. Again, they talk to each other on a CAN bus, so if you replace either one, the other one stops working as well. So like you replace the amplifier, you bypass it, you're not going to be able to control the volume. Same thing if you bypass, if you change the radio, you're not going to be able to control the volume of the amplifier. It's really annoying like that, so you want to change both, or if you're going to replace the radio, then you want to use our amplifier interface to do so. If you want to use the factory radio with aftermarket amplifiers bypassing this, it is possible. You're just going to need an amplifier that has the same capabilities as this. So you need something that can upmix, you need something that has individual volume control, and something you could set crossovers that has a good built-in DSP. So usually an amplifier that checks all those boxes is going to be pretty expensive. So you can look at some audio control pieces. You're going to start around like $1,200, $1,500. We really like the Audison AF bit pieces. You can make a combination of a DSP and another amplifier, but just know, be prepared to spend, I would say, north of $1,000 if that's what you decide to do. If you don't want to spend that much money, but you do want to be louder, again, you can check out the MDX video. We show you how to do that with basic amplifiers and just a line-out converter. No, it's not going to sound better, but it is going to be louder, and a lot of people just want to be loud nowadays, so that might be a solution for you. I didn't go into many functions of the factory audio system like I do in other videos. That's because I don't really have one to show you, but ultimately you had AM, FM, you had Bluetooth, you can put music into your hard drive, which is pretty big, like you could save music straight onto the unit, had auxiliary, and then you had that CD player. So, you know, traditional radio, traditional audio options. There was really, I think the hard drive audio was really the big feature, and then Bluetooth. But Bluetooth had some of its issues, and we'll cover that later on in the video. But normally I like to show you some of the factory audio functions. In this, I don't have a TSX with navigation, but I can tell you that they're pretty standard features. They're almost identical to the ones on the base. The only thing is you now have that hard drive, and then Bluetooth got a little bit of an upgrade, but not substantial enough where it stopped all the issues that they used to have. Continued on the list, covered the audio unit. Let's cover the display panel, or your control panel. What is the actual name of this thing? This is the audio navigation switch panel. Now, this has a display for your climate information, and this is very important because when you replace your radio, this display is gone. We're going to talk to you later on how to keep it or what to do about it. Now, this thing actually has 3 separate circuits built onto it that are very important. So first, we mentioned it earlier, you have your navigation control circuit, these buttons. That is through this 5-pin connector right here. This leads directly back to the navigation. So in your 2009, 2010, it leads to the trunk. In your 11, 12, 13, it's going to lead back to the brain right below it. Then you have your hazard switch. This is pretty standard, just a switch, 2-pin connector, really not much. The important one is right here. It's 28-pin connection. So when you're going to convert from the navigation to non-navigation display. This is the connection you use with our harness. But what is going on here is you have two separate circuits really. You have the circuit for the pins that lead back to the audio unit, which will tell it, you know, hey, I want XM, hey, I want next, I want previous, etc. And that control the volume. So that goes through here. But then also what goes through here is what drives this display. Now we haven't taken one of these apart to see if we can use this display somewhere else. Like, you know, like if you had a TSX from 2004, 2005, 6, 7, 8 with navigation, this is actually like right above the vents. So I don't know if it's transferable like that, but the pin out that goes from here to your climate thing runs this screen and it comes through here. So this connector is super important. This is the connection you use when converting, like I said, but this is responsible again for controlling the audio, controlling or allowing you to see your climate, and then also controlling your navigation. This is interchangeable from year to year, and never taken one apart, but I assume that the parts are going to be extremely similar from year to year as well. Let's continue down the list. We're going to talk about the ANC system. I don't have the module to show you, but it's behind the radio. ANC stands for active noise canceling. It has been called ENC as well. There's another name for it. I can't think of it on the top of my head, and I didn't write it down, but I just remember there's another name for it. But anyways, let me move on. Active noise canceling. I'm going to read you the exact definition out of the service manual. The active noise cancellation system cancels some of the vehicle noise. This occurs in the 1500 to 2400 RPM range. Microphones detect a low frequency sound, and the system outputs a canceling sound from the audio speaker. So what the hell does that mean? ANC, super annoying when you have subs. So active noise canceling is meant to battle sounds from the road or your engine and make your cabin quieter so you can have conversations. The way it does that is once the engine gets going at 1500, you said, to 2400, it's going to make a certain amount of and the speakers are going to make a noise to cancel that sound out. So whatever it's going to create a frequency that's supposed to hit that frequency and level out so you don't hear anything. It's supposed to cancel that noise. Now ANC is great when it works with your factory audio system because it's all integrated. It's all, you don't even notice it. But when you go aftermarket audio, so you're talking factory radio, factory amplifier, but you want to do some big subs, you want 210s, 212s, whatever, 15, then it's going to drive your aftermarket subwoofer crazy because it's going to try to make all this noise out of that subwoofer because the cancellation noises are always low frequency. So they're probably going to be below 100 hertz, below 120 hertz, and your subwoofer is going to go crazy. Especially when you're opening doors, closing doors, opening the trunk, closing the trunk, it's going to sound crazy. I'm sure maybe you've run to it in other cars, or maybe you have it right now. Now, I had no idea that the TSX even had ANC. So I've seen ANC on the MDX, I've seen ANC on TLX, seen it on ATL. Now, the reason why I didn't see it on the TSX is because I've only looked at 2.4 models. So the 3.5 got released in 2010. It wasn't available in 2009, correct me if I'm wrong. According to my research, the diagrams don't show don't show ANC to 2010. It was not in the 2009. So it looks like in 2010 they introduced the 3.5 liter engine for the TSX, and that came with ANC. So ANC isn't specific whether if you have the ELS or the base sound system, it's what engine you have. So if you have the bigger 3.5 engine, you're gonna have the two microphones, and this car doesn't have it, but I'll give you reference. I'm gonna throw images up on the screen. You have one right near your HFL microphone, and you have another one in the back right above the rear seats or behind the light switch. You know, when you open the door, the light turns on. Those two microphones are what's picking up road noise and allowing the ANC system to create the output to cancel that noise. The ANC is just a little module, has one connector. It's behind the factory radio. So if you're installing subs on the factory radio, I recommend just disconnecting it. If you don't want to pull the radio because it's too annoying, you can pull the headliner down and disconnect the microphones, or if it's going to be your car for life, you can cut the wiring. I don't recommend that, but a lot of people do it. But that's how you can disable ANC. The microphones for the ANC system are independent of the HFL, so if you are going to cut the mic wires, make sure you cut the right ones. I'm going to throw the pictures on the screen again so you have reference. But that's the ANC and system in a nutshell. I don't think it works with your windows down, so that may be another way to combat it if you're dealing with it right now as you're driving, is roll your windows down or one of your back windows down. It shouldn't work with your windows down. I've seen it in other cars that it works that way. I don't know for sure. I don't have a 3.5 liter to test with, but that's why I had no idea that these cars even had ANC, and I'm sure you probably didn't either, because most of them are 2.4s. So again, only the 3.5 has ANC. Super annoying to deal with, but if you have it, it's easy to eliminate. Just unplug it, or unplug those mics. And we both learned something today. I had no idea the car had ANC. But all right, let's move on to the next part. So we covered ANC. It's an external module. Let's talk about the HFL, which is another external module. HFL is responsible for your Bluetooth calls and your Bluetooth streaming. I'm sure you probably hate this thing, didn't even know what it was called or what the hell it did, but this, I think, on the sedan, is located behind the glove box. I'll throw a diagram on the screen so you can see. HFL stands for HandsFreeLink. Now, this has its own steering wheel control buttons, but we'll cover that later on. What I want to talk to you about right now, it's its main functionality, and that one, again, Bluetooth streaming and calls. So calls work all right. You usually don't hear anyone tell you have an echo. It's the streaming that sucks, and those things like to die. So usually in all Acuras, that's your weakest link in your audio system. In your MDX, it actually dies and it starts killing your battery. I haven't heard reports of that in the TSX, but if that's happened to you, I'd like to know. What ends up happening is it just eventually dies. So like, you'll listen to audio, you'll be streaming music, it'll disconnect. Be listening to audio, you're chilling, starts skipping for no random reason, like you're listening to CDs from back in the day. You connect your phone one day, no problem. Next day, it won't connect for some reason. And it just keeps going like that. It just keeps, little by little, eventually it won't even let you connect again. And it's super annoying to deal with. Now, if you're thinking, how can I fix the HFL? You can't. You can like resolder, and if you know a lot of electronics, you can probably put a new chip on it. I've seen in the forums people do that, and I think there is a repair service. If you Google hard enough, you can find someone to fix yours. But I don't think that's the proper solution. I'm not for throwing away e-waste, but that thing is just, it was not a good design from the factory. So what you want to do is look up Grom Audio. So look up Grom Audio. They make a interface, Bluetooth interface for this car still. So even if it has navigation or it doesn't, you can use that, plug it into the back of your radio, and you can stream your music that way. If not, you can use the aux port with those little 3.5 converters that have Bluetooth, but it's a little less fully integrated, because it doesn't even show the audio information. It just says Bluetooth streaming, I think. I might be wrong on that. If I am wrong, please let me know in the comments. I don't think you get the audio information when you stream Bluetooth. It just says Bluetooth audio. But that's, if you're gonna try to spend money fixing your HFL, I don't recommend it. Just get the Grom Audio piece, or live without it and go aftermarket radio. Just because there is no good fix to this. It's a ticking time bomb, and you want to take care of it. If it hasn't given you problems now, and I'm sorry if I scared you, but you do want to worry about it. Eventually, it's going to stop working. So again, Grom Audio has a Bluetooth streaming piece. You can use that. Bluetooth calling, I think it does as well. I'm not sure. If you want us to do a video on that, make sure you subscribe. We might do that as a bonus video. I'm not sure, just because I don't know how many people will actually use it. But if you think it's something you would use, leave it down in the comments. We'll make a video about it. All right, so let's continue to our antennas. So again, remember, we're moving down our list. We just talked about the HFL. We're moving to our antennas, and I told you I was going to show you where they are. So XM is on that fin. If you want to remove that antenna, like let's say you want to take the fin out, it does have a nut, so don't try to just pry at it. Then you have your defroster lines, and these are responsible for your AM FM reception. So if you ever had your car tinted and these got ripped off, or aftermarket glass, these aren't on it, your AM FM antenna reception is going to be terrible. You do have a booster, so that could be another reason why you have terrible reception. The booster is located in that panel over there behind this. It takes a 40 amp fuse, very powerful booster, so if that's not working, you'll have terrible reception as well. That covers AM, FM, and your XM antenna. So that XM antenna connects to your XM receiver that's in your trunk, and that's responsible for AcuraLink. Now, AcuraLink is super important. Again, never used it, so I'm going to read you the definition, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the research I've done. but I'd like to get first-hand comments from people who use AcuraLink actively so that I can understand a little bit more about it for the future, and so that people who are watching this video can get more information about it in case theirs doesn't work. They might want to fix it. AcuraLink's satellite communication system uses the client's cell phone or XM radio to transmit and receive information about the vehicle. In addition, the AcuraLink system is also able to initiate voice or data calls with the HandsFreeLink control unit. AcuraLink control, its main functions include providing XM radio functionality, including streaming music and displaying artist information. It also provides real-time data for traffic and weather. The AcuraLink system also processes engine trouble codes and displays detailed information of the trouble codes. There is also a message processing feature in the AcuraLink module for you to receive and send messages directly to Acura and their servers. Alright, so that all came from the service manual. I'm sorry to read at you, but I want to cover that information because it is important. Like I said, the information is either transmitted via your phone or those satellite signals, and it does do a lot, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you use it or not. Weather and live traffic updates are pretty good. I don't know how accurate they are. I'd like to learn that from someone who actually uses it compared to like Google or Waze. But I think that information of your trouble codes, it's so nice to have, because your traditional aftermarket radio isn't going to do that. You can get like an Android radio and then like an OBD2 converter and run some sort of app that shows you all that information, but it's nice to have from the factory. Hey, my check engine light's on. You go into your settings or you go into your navigation system and it tells you, hey, P040200 misfire, whatever it turns out to be, etc. So it's a nice feature to have, and I think that that's a big thing that holds people back. So the maps really isn't a big deal. Like when you think about it, like how often are you using your navigation on like a standard day? Pretty, I would say not a lot, because if you're driving to work, you know where work is. If you're driving to the supermarket, you know where supermarket is. Only if you're taking your car on trips. But then wouldn't you use Google Maps, like if it has more information? I don't know. It's your personal preference. It's your personal preference, but that's what I think. I don't know how good AcuraLink is. I'd like to know, so if you could leave it down in the comments, let me know your opinions on it. But I did want to mention it. It is super important. People, I think that's the main reason people don't switch, is because that AcuraLink feature and the navigation feature. You can get it on an aftermarket radio, like I said before, but it is going to be super complex compared to how easy it is from the factory. Again, this is a base, but in your tech package, you're going to have the same thing. So center console, you're going to have aux, and you're going to have USB. Those are both going to lead to the factory radio. Aux is pretty standard. You know, 3.5 millimeter, you plug it into the aux port, you plug it into your audio source, and you're just going to listen to your audio source through the factory radio. It's just left and right stereo, and then it gets converted, goes through the whole system. Your USB is a little bit more complicated. Your USB is going to be read by the USB controller inside of the audio navigation unit, and then it's going to process that information. I don't have one to test on to let you know like how good it is at reading media. It can read video. If it reads your Bluetooth, if it reads your iPhone audio or your Android audio, or does it try to treat them as USB drives, I don't know. I would like to know, so if you could leave it down in the comments for someone who uses this system every day, it'd be beneficial to everyone watching the video to know. You know, maybe they're trying to make a decision on whether buying a TSX, and they'd like to know, hey, can I at least, I know I don't have CarPlay, but could I plug my phone in and stream music from my phone that way instead of Bluetooth, etc. Or maybe your Bluetooth HFL is damaged and you didn't know you could stream audio through the USB port, and that'll save you from having to use Bluetooth. So that could be an option as well. Again, I don't know if it'll work, don't have one to test on. Trying to work with someone locally so that we can get our hands on one and then test some of the things that we're curious about on it. Alright, let's move on to a super common question we get, and something that a lot of people want to know about, and that's going to be your steering wheel controls. So I'm going to answer this real quick. Can you keep your steering wheel controls with an aftermarket radio on your ELS or tech package equipped Acura TSX? The answer is yes. You can keep your steering wheel controls. You'll keep volume up, volume down, previous mode, next. And that's all plug and play with our harnessing. You'll keep them no problem. Keep these no problem. These are plug and play installation you get to keep. When you have navigation, you have the extra buttons, and then your HFL has these buttons right here. Now, if you want to keep those extra four or five buttons, you're going to need to do some work. It's not necessarily a plug and play install. It's going to require you to do some wiring. So I have the steering wheel cover shroud stuff removed because I'm doing some other troubleshooting on this car. But ultimately, you're going to have to pop this off, and then there's a connector right here. This one right here is going to have a brown and an orange wire. So that connector is going to have a brown and orange wire. You're going to need to jump those wires with a resistor and then manually program your steering wheel controls, or depending on which steering wheel control module you have, you can run each individual wires to it, or you can run wires up to the actual I'm sorry, this has it down here, or you can run wires to your HFL module. So there are a couple other ways to keep those steering wheel controls. They're all resistive circuits, but it's all going to require additional wiring. Only volume up, volume down, previous, next, and mode are retained, plug and play, no issues. If you want to keep those other buttons, it is possible. You're going to have to do some custom wiring. We're going to cover that in our aftermarket radio installation video, so make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for that video. It's coming out. All right, we're progressing nicely. I know this video is kind of long, but the system's complex and there's a lot of parts to it. So we're moving on now. We're going to cover our woofers. So there's always a debate whether these are 5 1/4, 6 inch, 6 1/2. I'll let you decide. I call these 6 1/2s because installing a 6 1/2 here is what makes the most sense. But the reason why other sources might call it 5 1/4 or tell you to use 5 1/4 is because the cavity of the door. So I'm going to show you a picture of the cavity of the door. It has this weird patterns like this, and hey, it kind of looks like a skull. I never thought about that. But anyways, that makes it difficult to install a traditional 6 1/2, because a traditional 6 1/2 is going to have a little bit of a bigger magnet, and it's not going to sit flush against the metal of the door. So you have this weird fitment. So 5 1/4 fits into that cavity, and you can self-tap 4 screws. I don't recommend it. I think you're going to lose power and some sound if you go with 5 1/4. I recommend 6 1/2. The way you're going to be able to install a 6 1/2 is you're going to have to use an adapter. So we sell one, PAC sells one. There's a bunch of companies that sell one. These are probably the most easy obtainable to use, and they have the same pattern as the factory. The only problem with the PAC ones is they are a little flimsy, not the end of the world. But what I hate is these like to break. So I hate when I'm doing an install and then like just, you know, you're literally sliding this into place and you're not the Hulk. And then one of these snaps off. It's super annoying. And then like you only bought 2, so then you have to wait. Ours don't have that. We send you inserts and stuff. So like there's nothing that like this that's gonna break. It is a lot stronger. It has reinforcements on the back. It can take a variety of more speakers. It does install differently. Just, I love our spacers. I always recommend them to people. There are other spacers available. Just use a spacer if you're going to install an aftermarket speaker. Please don't be this guy. Don't be this guy. Oh, I'm going to install aftermarket speakers. Oh, I don't need an adapter. Let me butcher the factory speaker because I'm never going to use it again. And then let me screw my speaker into here so that it sits uneven and all the audio leaks out and I have no mid bass. Just don't, man. Literally $12. I get it. Hey, you know, like I need to do this today. Plan ahead. Don't do this. Don't. And if you go to an audio shop and they do this to your speakers, demand your money back. This is ridiculous. Like, I understand back in the day when adapters weren't possible, or you know, like maybe your shop is smaller, you can't make one out of wood, whatever it turns out to be. But like to do this when there are adapters available and they're easily available is ridiculous. But all right, let me stop ranting. So back to your speakers. Again, they're gonna be black. They're gonna look like this. I'm gonna throw an image on the screen. And your speakers, unlike the bass, are 2 ohms. So each woofer has 2 ohms of resting impedance, or the resistance of the speaker is 2 ohms. And they also have a proprietary connector, but more on that later. Let's talk about impedance real quick. So impedance is a measure of resistance, and everything electrical has resistance. Your woofers on your bass have a resistance of 4 ohms. On your ELS, remember how the amplifier is only this big and it needs to make power to 10 speakers. So what Acura did was to get more power of the amplifier and use the same power circuit. Is they lowered the resistance of their speakers because the amplifier is able to send more power to a lower resistance speaker. Now you can go from 2 ohm to 4 ohm speakers because the resistance is higher. You'll get less power, and that's very common in Acuras where people buy speakers that shouldn't be for the Acura. Like, yeah, it fits, but the resistance is different, so now you're getting less volume. So if you have 2 ohm speakers, you want to use 2 ohm speakers. What you don't want to do is go from 4 ohm speakers to 2 ohm speakers, or from 2 ohm to 1 ohm. As you go lower in impedance, the amount of power that the amplifier can effectively send the speaker increases, but because these are factory amplifiers, they have no protection in place. They're not designed to be used with all kinds of equipment. They're designed to be used with the factory equipment. So what that means is if you change your 4 ohm speaker for a 2 ohm or your 2 ohm for a 1 ohm, it's going to increase the output. It's going to sound, oh wow, I got so much louder. But your amplifier producing more output is going to generate more heat. So hopefully it blows your fuse, but it could possibly not blow the fuse, generate more heat, and eventually kill itself. So you don't want to go lower impedance. You always want to go higher impedance if you need to, because it's safe to do that. But all right, back to these actual speakers. So again, 2 ohm speakers still have a neodymium magnet, proprietary mounting mechanism. We talked about it, use a spacer, proprietary speaker adapter. So Honda makes it really complicated to replace these speakers. You're gonna need a spacer or a speaker adapter, and you're gonna need a speaker harness. Plugs into here, gives you the 2 terminals. We have them available on our website. I'll throw a picture up so you can see. And again, this is the kind of speaker you're replacing. 6.5. They're all the same speakers, so if you want to buy 6 of the same speakers, you can. If you're looking for speakers, we do have our speaker sets available on our website. Something I will mention to you about the ELS sound system speakers is even your bass speakers, these are pretty good speakers from the factory. So if you're having a problem with one of your speakers and you don't want to spend or invest the money into decent speakers, I would grab a factory one. Acura still sells either one. You can pick up either one. But don't buy cheap Walmart speakers. So like Walmart will do their deals where they'll have like a radio and 4 speakers. Those speakers are 9 out of 10 times not that good. At least not as good as your factory. Don't get me wrong, some cheap speakers sound alright. But your factory speakers for your ELS sound system were designed to work with the ELS sound system, and there aren't terrible designs. Like, it's a neodymium magnet that's very efficient. This cone material has good surface area for what it is. So like, a cheap speaker is not going to sound much better than this if you're planning to upgrade. If one of these are blown, then I wouldn't even recommend aftermarket speakers that are cheap. I would recommend going straight with an OEM one. Our JBL speakers that we offer, I want to say are going to be factory equivalent. So if one of yours is blown, maybe you want to go JBL just because you like JBL, and that's okay. But if you think they're going to be an upgrade, I don't think they will. I think on the factory amplifier, they're going to sound the same than your factory speakers. If you want an upgrade on the factory amplifier, I recommend the Audison speakers, or if you're going to go full sound system, I recommend the Audison speakers. They are a little bit more pricey, so you can try to find similar speakers to them, but I just don't think you can beat the quality and just the sound of those speakers. I really like them. But alright, let me stop talking about speakers. Let's move on to the next, which are going to be our tweeters. Before I stop rambling about speakers, the last thing I want to tell you is magnet size. So remember, the door has that weird shape, and even if you do use a spacer, the spacer has a good spot to fit a big speaker. The door doesn't. So even though if your speaker fits into this spacer or fits into our spacer, they may not clear the door. So you're going to end up, if you have like a huge loudspeaker from, PRV, Timpano, Scar has some, I'm trying to think, DS18 has some, there's a ton of companies. JBL even makes some huge loudspeakers. If you're going to put a huge magnet speaker in your car and it clears this, the door cavity is going to be your next problem. You're going to have to cut it. When you go to cut it, you're going to eliminate the holes that these slide into. So you're going to need another spacer, a universal one that you can drill into the door. So just know, if you want to use huge loudspeakers, it's annoying. It's possible. You're going to have to cut the metal of the door. You're going to have to put in your own bracket. It is possible. I don't think the front doors hit the magnet. I'm not sure. We'll see it in our speaker upgrade video, so make sure you subscribe. I think on the rear door you're clear though. It's like the way the slanted is in the window, it doesn't hit the speaker. But again, we'll cover that in our speaker video, so make sure you subscribe. Those videos are coming out next. Covered all the woofers. Let's talk about our tweeters. So this just snaps out of place, pretty easy to remove, and then your tweeters clipped in there. In your ELS equipped TSX, these share the same line as your front woofers do. So your tweeters aren't on a separate line like in your bass. Same line. So these are protected with a bass blocking capacitor. Puts your crossover right around 3000 hertz. And then these are 6 ohms because they're wired in parallel with these, so it brings a resistance to like 2.2 or something. If you want to have the easiest time replacing your tweeters, I recommend JBL tweeters or Infinity tweeters. they fit into our tweeter cups, which makes mounting new tweeters real simple. If you're using bigger tweeters, the housing for the factory tweeter is pretty forgiving. It comes apart a little bit so that you can fit new tweeters or screw them in there and they don't look too bad. Again, if you want to see that, we're going to cover that in our speaker video, so make sure you subscribe. But if you're looking for the easiest upgrade on your tweeter because one's blown, I think the easiest might be getting another factory tweeter. And here's the part number if you need that. But if you want to upgrade your tweeters, JBL or Infinity is going to have the tweeters that are small enough that fit into here. I think they're 20 or 19 millimeter. Your Pioneer tweeters just barely make it. They're 19 millimeter, but you can kind of fit them into the factory housing and like make like a mount yourself. So, you know, you have options, but no like your big tweeters. So like DS18 I think has 1-inch tweeters. They're not going to fit in there. I think like 3/4. I think Kicker is going to have the biggest tweeter that fits in there where you can make a nice mount and not go crazy. You can like open up the hole and put your own tweeter in there. You have multiple options. On your TSX, those tweeters aren't on the dash or in your A-pillars. They're right on the cell panel, so it just makes it easier to upgrade. But I did want to cover them. They are part of the audio system. There is 2 of them. They're rated for 15 watts and they're 6 ohms. In your base, these are 3.3 ohms, and they're not interchangeable because your base does not have a base blocking capacitor on them, so you want to grab them from an ELS system. So this is your center dash speaker. It's 4 ohms. It's responsible for your calls and some of the guidance from your navigation. Pretty small power speaker, but if you do want to upgrade it, a 3.5 does fit here. Something we get pretty often is people saying that a traditional 3.5, so people say a traditional 3.5 doesn't fit, that they don't line up, and it does. Some are bulkier than others, but you have to go on the most interior part of the hole to get this to line up. If you look at our MDX video, it shows you how to do it. We'll cover this on the TSX later on. Just make sure you subscribe when we do the speaker upgrade. These 3.5s are also in your wagon, so you have these in your C-pillars, and to get these out, it is pretty annoying. You do have to take a lot of the trim off, but I don't know if you are gonna want to upgrade these because they're such low power. But I mean, if you could turn these into tweeters, that might be something you want to do for your rear speakers. I don't know, it's up to you. But no, 3.5 traditional Honda connector, and they are 4 ohms. They're not 2 ohms. So when you look for replacement speakers, you want 4 ohm speakers, and this is about their footprint. So they're not too tall, not too wide, and they're crossed over usually around 800 hertz. I don't have the breakdown for the center or the pillars on this. When I get that information, I'll put it in the speaker video when we go to make it. So hopefully I'll get that information soon. Moving on to the last part. Sorry if I'm like looking all over the place, so I look distracted. There's like 2 huge wasps flying around, not trying to get stung. So this isn't the exact woofer in your TSX. It's a little different in your 09 and 10. And then 11, 12, 13, I think it looks exactly like this. And ultimately, they're the same woofer because they use the same mounting mechanism, the same proprietary connector, and they have the same impedance. So this is a 2 ohm impedance woofer. These are the ELS woofers. They are mounted on the rear deck, or if you have a wagon, they're mounted inside the enclosure. And they are free air woofers, or rated to be free air woofers. They get between 60 to 100 watts depending on which car they're in. In your sedan, they're going to get 60 watts. This woofer is probably the speaker that people want to upgrade the most. And when you go to upgrade it, you need to make sure you upgrade to a woofer that has the same qualities that this one has. So this is an 8-inch woofer, 2 ohm in final impedance, has a proprietary Honda connector. It's only about 4 inches tall. The surround of the woofer sits below the base, so like you see, it doesn't come up and over, so it doesn't hit the rear deck. And it doesn't have this huge magnet. Yeah, the magnet's pretty wide, but it's not huge. So when you go to replace this woofer, you need to find something that's similar. And you'll find that the first problem you're going to run into is that no other woofer has the same 4 holes. So you might think to break this apart to make a new bracket. That's not necessary because we have the mounting bracket. So this lines up the same that the factory does. It does line up a certain way, so you might need to twist it because this one is offset from the rest of them. So the kicker woofer we offer looks like this, and with the mounting bracket you get the same mounting as this one. The only thing that troubles this woofer is the added thickness. So you get about an inch of added thickness because of the bracket and the woofer. And then it does sit kind of flush to the surround, but there is a little bit here. So sometimes if you don't trim the plastic, this can hit the rear deck when it starts moving. But this is going to probably be your best option. There are other woofers, but this is really the most cost-effective one. And it's a dual 4-ohm voice coil, which means you get it to 2 ohms when you wire it in parallel, and then we give you the factory connection so that it's all plug and play. And this is rated for free air. It's about 150 watts compared to the 100 watts or 80. Really, this is rated for 40 watts, but it's inside that enclosure. We'll call it 80 watts or 100 watts to be safe. This is up to 150. We do have the Comp R woofer that's up to 300 watts, depending on how much power you want to throw at these. But this, again, 2 ohm final impedance, free air environment. The surround doesn't poke out too much, and it's just about as tall as this guy. It's just a little bit taller, but in your TSX in the back, the depth isn't so much a limitation. Other cars like your Honda Accord it is, but back there it doesn't have another cavity to go into, so this won't be a problem. The only thing is getting that rear deck on might be a little bit of a problem because of the added thickness, but just know upgrades are available if you want to do it. Before you click off this video and decide, hey, okay, I'm gonna upgrade that subwoofer. I've been thinking about upgrading my subwoofer. If your subwoofer is blown, I highly recommend the Kicker subwoofer. If you want an upgrade, I recommend the Kicker subwoofer if you're gonna go with another amp. So something that has come up after selling, I would probably say 1,000 of these woofers at this point. After selling probably 1,000 or more, maybe more than 1,000, I don't know, I have to go look at numbers, but definitely more than 1,000 woofers. I would say 85 to 90% of people are always happy with the woofer. You do have 10% of people who don't think it's an upgrade. So your Honda Civic owners, man, they really do not like this woofer for some reason. I don't know what it is. Acura TL people, Acura TSX customers, they're like, love it, 5-star review, I just love it. Honda Civic, I need to return this. This doesn't sound any better. I tested it, don't like it. Tested it, don't like it. Very strange, very strange. I wonder why that is. I think they're maybe expecting a lot more. Maybe the demographic, I really don't know. I need to figure that out. But anyways, let me stop rambling. Back to the woofer. So you want to upgrade. If you upgrade the woofer, it might sound better on certain songs. It might sound better on all songs. Sound is very personal to everyone, and what note or what sound you're looking to increase may not be what comes out of this woofer. The reason why I say this to you is because I don't want you to buy this and think because this is rated for more power that it's going to be so much louder than the factory. This is a better woofer. It has a better design. It can handle more power. It's more efficient. But the factory woofer was designed to work with the factory amplifier. So this is optimized for this amplifier. This woofer is optimized for best overall. So if you go and you upgrade your subwoofer, there might be a chance that you're like, hey, like this doesn't sound any better to me than the factory does. If your woofer is blown, of course it's gonna sound better. But if it's not blown and it's working perfectly fine, this may not be an upgrade until you change the amplifier. And we have a plug and play amplifier for the TSX for the bass. We're working on one for the ELS package. Just know that the ELS package, since it is more complex, that amplifier is going to be more expensive, and we don't necessarily know if it'll be fully plug and play because it might need new power connections to the battery, and you're going to need to set up a new trunk. But I think I covered everything for the subwoofer. 8 inches, proprietary mechanism. We have the bracket, proprietary harness, 2 ohm final impedance, 40 to 60 watts. Yep, okay, yep. And then I talked about the aftermarket subwoofer. Yep, covered that too. So just wanted to share that with you. I don't want you to buy something that you're not going to be truly satisfied with. I don't know if you can see our reviews. Go on Trustpilot, Google, our website. Like, customer satisfaction is something we really care about. If you're not happy with the woofer though, like, we don't resell used stuff, so like we're losing out just because you're not happy with something you bought, and we're not Amazon. We can't accept every single return. So like, if you want the woofer, get it. If you want a substantial upgrade, make sure you upgrade the amplifier, or at least the amplifier powering this woofer. I almost forgot, we have just a subwoofer upgrade that we're planning to launch with an amplifier package, and it's just a little small guy to power this to its full potential. We are testing that next week. Next week. So I'll have results. I'll film a little short from what I get, so you want to watch that, see if that's enough. If not, if you're thinking about upgrading this and you want the bass that comes out of 212s, it's not going to happen. So just throw some subs in the trunk and call it a day, because even if you power this with 300 watts, you're going to be shaking your rear deck so much that all you're going to hear is rattle instead of the sub. If you want a nice subtle upgrade, you just want a little bit more bass, or if this is blown, I recommend this. If you want like to shake your windows, you're not going to get it from this little 8-inch. At the end of these videos, I like to cover the problems with the factory sound system. We talked about them earlier, kind of touched on them with the HFL, you know, not just dying or not working correctly. The navigation drive likes to go, please check this when you have the DVD based one, so 2009, 2010. I haven't seen too many issues on the 2011 and up navigation systems. I did get an email recently from someone saying that there is giving them some hard drive error, but that's one person out of, I don't know how many emails, probably tens of thousands of emails at this point that we've answered. So I haven't really heard about it much, but if you see any other issues with your ELS system, I'd like you to leave them down below. I'd like to learn more about the common issues. But again, HFL we've seen, DVD drive, oh, popping or crackling. I've seen that too. From people think it's the amplifier or the radio. It's kind of hard to isolate. In the MDX, the popping comes from the radio. And then I've seen in the MDX loss of audio on one channel, but that's because of the harness. Yeah, no, I think that's what for your ELS system, it's pretty good in terms of audio issues. Like besides the HFL, the amplifier doesn't really fail, and then the audio unit doesn't really fail. They're different, so they're not built in all in one. So yeah, no, I haven't seen any major issues on that. If you have any major issues you've seen, I'd like to know about them. Leave them down in the comments. Again, we're still learning about this car. It's relatively new to us, and we don't do a ton of installs on it, so I'd like to learn as much as possible to be able to share with you. It's going to be it for the video, guys. I'm going to show you what it's going to take to install an aftermarket radio, and I'm going to clear up a lot of misinformation at the end here. But when it comes to the factory audio system on the ELS or tech package, I don't think it's bad. There's a lot to it. It's very complex, but it sounds pretty good. The car gets pretty loud. If everything's working as it should, I mean, there's really the only reason to upgrade would be for CarPlay. And like you can get CarPlay. So if you look at Grom Audio, they have a V-line part, and that plugs into the audio system, and it'll show CarPlay on here. So if all you're looking for is CarPlay, you don't really need to upgrade that much. I think that the Grom Audio piece really takes the cake there, because if all you want is CarPlay, you could go Android screen to the factory audio system, but the sound will be kind of lousy. But if all you're looking is for CarPlay, I mean, that kind of works. But yeah, that's going to cover the factory audio system, guys. Sorry to be rambling on. I'm just trying to make sure that I covered everything that I wrote down. There were 16 pages of this stuff. Now, my last page, I want to talk to you about a lot of misinformation that's on the radio install side of this stuff. So if you have a TSX with navigation, you want to upgrade the radio, it's possible. There are a couple of different options out there. I'm going to cover the options you have, and then I'm going to show you the most straightforward one. So you have the Android screens. I'm going to throw up images on the screen of the Android screens. They sit above the vents. They're going to sit where this screen goes, in front of it or in place of it. Sorry. Where this screen goes, in front of it or in place of it. They are Android based, and they integrate into the factory audio system. So if there's something wrong with your factory audio system, you're gonna have a problem with these. All these do is they show CarPlay, whatever you want on the screen, and then the audio out goes from here to the factory audio unit, and then out of the factory audio unit to your amplifier. So you're gonna get lousy sound because you're gonna have to max this out to get the sound you want. But if you just want CarPlay, or you just want YouTube, Netflix, whatever it is, those screens work, and they're probably going to be your best bet for that. If you want to replace, so the one I see all the time is the one that goes here, and the screen is here. Don't get this one. It's not going to work the best for your TSX. You want the one that goes up there. This one is going to eliminate this control panel, and you're going to lose the ability to control the volume from the factory. You want something that integrates into the factory so that you can have the easiest upgrade. If you're going to go with the one that goes here, you're going to want to pick up our amp interface, and then at that point you're bringing your price so high up that the cheap 150 you spend on this or 120 you spend on this, you're going to spend that on the amplifier interface. So I don't recommend the one that goes here. if you're gonna go with the one that goes here, then I recommend a traditional double DIN, and that's what I'm gonna talk to you about. So if you wanna go a traditional aftermarket double DIN, so you have a Pioneer, Kenwood, Alpine, something name brand, something solid you know has worked, it's gonna give you all the audio options you want. You're gonna need, obviously first, the dash kit. So that's gonna be the 957805CH. That's gonna be the piece of plastic that takes this. You're gonna transfer your vents. You can modify the dash kit, transfer this, but let's assume you don't. You're gonna transfer the vents, your double DIN is gonna go here. This control panel is gone, but this screen is still there, and this is still there. So now what you're gonna do is we're gonna convert this to this. And the reason for that is because when we got rid of this control panel, we lost our climate information, because our climate information shows up here. It doesn't show up on your navigation screen. So we're gonna take this information, we're gonna make it show up on this screen, and we're gonna take the screen that's in our car and swap it for this one. This screen, in order to power it, the harnesses back there are not the same. This has a 28 pin connector. This has only a 14 pin connector. So what you need is this harness right here. We sell this. This harness plugs in where the display panel goes. So it's this connector right here, right there. And then it plugs into the screen. This is how you get your climate information back. So this is step one. Now you have your climate information, you have your dash kit, you move on to your audio side. On your audio side, in order to get the factory amplifier to work with an aftermarket radio, remember it's a very complex amplifier, you're going to need a plug and play harness and the ELS amplifier interface. Now this interface plugs into your plug and play harness that we will be sending you. It plugs in right here, and then the way you control the volume of the factory system is with this volume knob. So this volume knob adjusts volume up and down. It plugs right into here, and again, this will come with your ELS amplifier interface or your complete kit. You're going to mount this control knob. It's going to have a little actual knob on the face of this dash kit, and then that'll allow you to control the volume of the factory amplifier with your factory radio. There's a little caveat to all this. If you watch the MDX video, you'll understand more of it. We're gonna cover all this information when we install an aftermarket radio, but people keep asking about it, so I wanna have something now. So ELS amplifier interface, plug and play harness. Now your radio's installed. You have audio controlling the factory amplifier, so you get to keep all your speakers. You want to keep your steering wheel controls. Remember, we talked about only volume up, volume down, previous, next, and mode are going to work. You're going to need your steering wheel control adapter to do that. If you want to control your other, if you want your other steering wheel controls to work, you need to do some custom wiring. You're going to have to wait for that video to come out. But if you want to get something done right now, then this is the other part you're going to need. The last thing you're going to need is going to be up to you if you want to keep your factory backup camera or not. So remember, we took this screen out. We put this screen in its place. So this shows us our climate control information. So you have blower speed, temperature, and then location, etc. No more backup camera. So you can reroute your backup camera coming out of this connection right here. We have a plug and play harness to keep your camera. So our camera connection is going to plug in here, and it'll give you an RCA to plug into the back of your radio to give you your backup camera. You will have to wiretap the reverse trigger, which is going to be on one of these harnesses in the back of your radio. We'll give you the instructions. But this way, when you're done with all that, there's a lot of steps. You need those 4 components. You can install a traditional aftermarket radio, keep your backup camera, keep your steering wheel controls, and keep your climate control information on this screen. Like I said, 4 real total components. You're gonna need this screen, you're gonna need the dash kit, you're gonna need steering wheel controller, you're gonna need the amplifier interface, the climate control conversion harness, and the backup camera harness. This you can buy separately. This you can buy separately. If you need all of this, the links will be down in the description. You can buy it as a kit. Everything comes together. and then you can make your installation simpler. Again, this is for a traditional double DIN radio. If you're looking at your Android screens or your other options, I don't have all the information yet. So if you have comments regarding or questions regarding that, leave it down in the comments and I will cover them when I get to it, when I find that information out. That's going to be for the video, guys. I hope this last couple of minutes helped you out, because I know we got a ton of questions on how to upgrade the radio on my TSX. This is how, if you want to do a traditional double DIN, and that covers the entire audio system on your tech package as well. Appreciate it if you made it this far. Make sure you give the video a like, make sure you subscribe, because we have a lot more videos coming out for your TSX.